Hey guys, yeah, I got asked about how I recorded these sci-fi sounds. Um, so, yeah, I thought I'd do a bit of a breakdown. Excuse me. For a start, my approach here is just mine. Your mileage may vary, of course, and there's no right or wrong way to do these things. So this is just how I did them, and hopefully it'll give people who are new a bit of an idea. So, excuse me. So you can see here that we have the animation from a retro pixel art game I'm working on. Um, oops. So the first sci-fi door, the one in blue here, is basically a more mechanical version of the sound. The green one is a hybrid um, between kind of more sci-fi and mechanical to give it a little bit more futuristic feel. And the third one is the most kind of energy sci-fi door. So there's kind of a hybrid of the three. So we kind of yeah. So we have three kind of hybrids, and yeah. So again, this is the first one. We'll listen for the more mechanical stuff. So when I'm kind of doing stuff like this, to me, it's all about layering. Well, layering and pitching are kind of the most kind of important elements, and obviously sample selection. But so I've layered up various things here we can have a listen to. Now, for a start, if we look at the video, you'll notice that here there is a little panel, and that needs a kind of a UI interface kind of bleep for it unlocking, and then it over here it locks, and then as it closes, it goes back to orange, which indicates that it's locked. So this is the same for all three. There's some kind of interface noise. Don't really have time to get into how I made these interface noises. That may be for another video. But basically, I took two little interface noises that I did ages ago in one of my packs and just layered them up. So we can listen. And it's just a case of kind of an acknowledgement that the door is now open and ready to physically open. And then on the end, it's just closing. So we have a more kind of a slightly negative sound. So you've got your open close. I layered up two different sounds, and now we get into the meat where the actual individual layers are that make up the sound of the door kind of opening and closing. Just before we get into it, I thought when I'm approaching these things, I'll kind of study the animation that I'm given or whatever, and then I'll think about the actual making of the door, like as what comprises of the whole door opening and closing, and I'll break it down into its components. So for me, I'd be thinking the material, what's it made out of, what is it touching, or what friction elements are in there. Is there a power source? In this case, because it's science fiction, there's a power source. Obviously, the technology will also dictate what type of sound you're using. Mechanical elements, there is some kind of mechanical elements. I would assume behind the door, kind of like clicks or pops or cranks, kind of opening and then rolling the door across or whatever. If you were doing something, let's say more fantasy, well, obviously you may not have a power source, and it would be all mechanicals. For example, like if it was a portcullis or something. And then, excuse me, I would think about what elements I want to make more present for the actual door opening, and that's kind of a matter of taste, and that's a case of just mixing how you want and using a bit of EQ, etc. But let's have a look at these individual elements, and so yeah, so that's the first. So that's the UI. So here we go. This is a processor tray. I think that is also another element, sci-fi element. Nothing. Again, it's more an acknowledgement that the door is opening, so that's not really that important. But here we would have some kind of door opening, and this sound is just, as you can probably, I don't know if you can see the screen there, it's basically central locking, and I use that to give that kind of mechanical element for it to open. And I would have pitched that slightly, and then there's more central locking here. I took another part of the actual file, so you have giving it a bit of a slide, for providing the friction for the, I know it could be the rubber element of the door that kind of moves, but it kind of depends. And then we have a double layer here to give it the door the thump as it closes. I think that is, yeah, this element is you've got your more central core locking again, and then this is layered with a distorted kick, I believe. Yeah, a distorted Foley kick that I recorded and heavily distorted, but with it down in the mix, you don't really, it just kind of, it works well with the other element. So you kind of get that nice kind of thud. And then I wanted to include some kind of power source, and I thought that my microwave would work well. So I recorded my microwave, and it gives a pretty decent power on off, and it nearly provides a kind of an extra sliding element. So was pretty happy with that. Felt that they needed another friction, and this is like provided by the seat belt of my car, or my old car, I should say. And I chose the elements that sounded more, the inertia seat belts, which sounded more for opening and closing. You can see that's going up, and this one is kind of going down. So, when you combine it with the microwave, you get that kind of nice power sense, but also a kind of more friction as well. So, let's look at the last two bits here. Well, this one first. Yeah, this is a cardboard box. I can't remember which element is, but maybe it's opening it and scratching at it or something. Excuse me. And I picked two different takes, and they kind of work. Again, it gives that kind of extra sense of friction. I pitched them. I'm not sure exactly what I did, because everything is kind of broken down now at this stage. So, but yeah, it would have been some pitch, maybe some kind of light distortion. And then lastly, we have a metal drag. And again, this just came out of my sample folder. I can't remember what two elements are scratching together, but overall, once they're combined and mixed, we end up with combined element that works pretty well, I think. So for the second one, frog in my throat, I do apologize. For the second one, as I said, this is a hybrid between mechanical and more energy. So let's have a listen to this one quickly. Again, we have, as I said, the kind of the two kind of interface, UI locking mechanism, you know, the bleeps. So they're pretty straightforward. And we're now, I thought that, you know, given that it is a metal door, it would be, what would be good would be a filing cabinet that has been opened and closed. But I've removed, I think, if I remember correctly, the knocks at the end where the drawer impacts the actual inside of the cabinet. So let's have a listen. There's a little bit of impact there actually that I kept in again for the close, but it, you know, I picked two elements that sounded like one was being opened, the other being closed. Kept a nice, little knock, so that kind of gives it that kind of mechanical clunk as it closes. Here, okay, these are filing drawer impacts. So when the actual drawer hits off the inside of the filing cabinet. Quite light, so I've EQ'd them and just combining these two kind of adds, oh sorry, I was wondering. So that gives the extra mechanical locking mechanism, opening and closing. Have another part of a filing cabinet here. And again, it will provide extra sliding friction with the other cabinet, but there's obviously, I kept in some extra knocks, so you get that kind of as it opens and closes. This one, I think, is the microwave appliance door. It's just an average microwave, but it's quite old, so it's nice and squeaky. So if we listen to that, you kind of get that nice kind of plasticky creak. And again, a lot of these kind of slightly higher elements I would have EQ'd to take out like that bottom where you don't want it to kind of muddy the mix too much. Can definitely hear it on that. I've taken out quite a bit. So with these kind of elements, with these two, it gives you just that extra creak, and then when you add in your other element, although it still sounds quite mechanical, and where it kind of branches off is when I add in the electrical or the energy type elements. But this is a wood scrape. Oops, sorry. And that's quite heavily processed. Not 100% sure what I did to it, but it's definitely kind of well processed. But it gives you that, you know, nice scratch, but also kind of nearly like a metal jangle. Again, I can't quite remember how I did that off the top of my head, but it would be like mainly pitching, maybe a bit of time stretching or something. And then we have here another scrape, and that's a heavy wood scrape. And then finally we have some synth, which will give us that give us that nice kind of energy. So when it's all put together, we get a kind of a hybrid of the two. I missed that one, sorry. I had that of the mechanical and the kind of more sci-fi. And finally, this one here is the most sci-fi of the three. So I gave the client three options, and of course there was a lot of trial and error, in these as well. So it wasn't a case of I just pulled out X, Y, and Z sample and it worked perfectly the first time. I'm just kind of showing you the kind of more final kind of process. So yeah, there was kind of quite a bit of trial and error before. Yeah, so back to the elements. The first one is your basic, as I said, the simple UI sounds. The unlock and lock. And here, if I remember correctly, okay. So a lot of this stuff is now done for the more energy sounds. I used a Lam microphone, which records electromagnetic in the electromagnetic range. So you end up with some very cool, strange, staticky energy sounds. Very good for interference, anything sci-fi, and once you add distortion to them, they sound great. But let's hear what I have for each one. So here we go. Yeah, so nearly like that kind of staticky lightsaber effect. And again, I would have picked the best two that are more, one for the opening sound and the one for slightly lower sound for the closing of the door. What do we have now? We also have, this is more electromagnetic recordings from the Presior. So they're quite different. And then once we add them, combine the two, still needs obviously more elements because it just doesn't have, the door itself doesn't have much weight, so we need more friction. And if I remember correctly, I use some granular sound effects for this. So it gives it more depth and friction. And then I added some more granular stuff that I had done. And then when we combine the two, and finally we have I wanted to add some more friction in there, so I used a fire grate, and that's just the kind of where the ash is kept, and you just slide it out of the bottom of the fire grate, and you get a sound like this. So I did want some kind of physical manifestation of the door scraping off the elements, and so here we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it for those. The processing and the way I kind of processed the stuff is probably kind of beyond the scope of this particular video. I can kind of go into that if I want, if you guys want me to. Basically EQ, pitching, bit of time stretching, etc. And of course, when you're layering this stuff, when I'm picking layers, I try to get ones that will either complement each other or kind of fill out stuff where, bolster certain effects. So I might use two scrapes, heavy scrapes for something, and then I'll try and put something on top of that, which would be a kind of a lighter effect. And then on the bottom end, you maybe about a heavy drag or whatever is needed. So you're kind of filling out the kind of three areas of the EQ spectrum. Excuse me. Now, normally I would have stuff in here. I would have a lot of sub bass going on, or sorry, sub to give the door a heavy thump. But as this isn't a heavy sci-fi door, it's just a corridor door, if you will, pardon the pun. I don't think it needed a huge big sci-fi thump to hit you in the chest. Now there is another door coming up, and that's going to be in the game. That's going to be a lot bigger, and it's a big industrial door, and that's going to have that like big heavy mechanics. So I'm going to start pitch stuff right down and use a lot of like lower elements. But for this, I just it's just a light door that's in a corridor, and I just didn't think it needed. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. If you have any comments or questions, drop me a line. Yeah, okay, so thanks guys, take care.